When you hear that social media is dividing people, setting lines of division, or dividing people along either racial lines, class lines, you name it, you might think, oh, it's just another day. But I think that we've reached a new point in the online division. And I want to talk about that today. We have a couple of instances that are serving as reference for these giant giving platforms, either talking about GiveSendGo, GoFundMe, and others. And we also have a couple instances coming directly from social media that are serving as a little bit of a kind of warning sign, I would say, for the future. So we're going to talk about those and some other things going on around the country, around the world. And yeah, I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. Hope you guys had a great week and have a great week coming up. Let's get right into it. So, welcome back to the With the Patriots podcast. I'm your host, Sal Asante, and before we get going today, I just want to get something off my chest. Turns out I look back on some of the metrics for the show, and about 70 to 80% of you going on YouTube are not subscribed to the channel. So, if you could be so kind, take a second, click that button below the video, right next to the video, become a subscriber, help get this word out and spread this page to some more people. We could be headed in a pretty nice direction, I would say. And that's about all I have on that. I thank you to those of you that are subscribed and continue to listen to all the shows that we put out. Let's get into the topic of choice today. Had a pretty disturbing occurrence happen this past week over the weekend here. If you're not aware, we had a lady by the name of Shiloh Hendricks, not to dox her, but well, let's be honest, she's already been plastered all over the internet, and I'm sure she's loving the amount of money that's coming her way, utilizing a platform by the name of GiveSendGo. If you have not heard of this platform, I'm pretty new to hearing about it as well. It's not a new platform, but it is getting into the limelight with a few of the recent happenings in the United States. One being the what is his name? Luigi Mangione, the alleged murderer of the CEO. Also, we have the recent stabbing in Texas and the defendant in that case, Carmelo Anthony. And now we have Shiloh Hendricks. So I'll talk a little bit about the few instances, but I really don't want to harp on them too much. What I'm really more concerned with is the amount of money that's changing hands. So for those of you that did not catch our show, I believe it was the middle of December, we have an alleged murderer of a CEO that was of United Healthcare Services, and the alleged murderer's name is Luigi Mangione. I'll be honest, I gave my honest opinion back then. I still, to this day, I find it hard to believe that he is actually the murderer, but that does not mean that there can't be substantial evidence brought upon this case and brought into be. But at this point, that donation page has generated very near $1 million for Mangione, and it is a little bit, I guess, disturbing in a way. Don't really have a better way of putting that. It's definitely a disturbing thought to think that so many people in this country want to support an alleged murderer without really finding out more facts of the case. Again, another alleged murderer by the name of Carmelo Anthony has now at this point received over $500,000 in donations on the same platform, GiveSendGo. And now the most recent case that has come up is this Shiloh Hendricks. So what happened with her? And again, if you haven't heard my thoughts already on the Carmelo Anthony case, go back a few episodes, I believe, where I talked about race and division, which unfortunately seems to be a little bit of a theme here in the country at this point. Yeah, Shiloh Hendricks, what's going on? Well, Shiloh alleges that her young child's diaper bag got stolen from at a town community park. He used a slur against a child and then got videotaped by somebody else that was at this park, an adult, and proceeded to use that slur against this person multiple times on video. And now you can go look it up. I'm not going to post links to it or anything. You can go look up how the description of this event is under her eyes, how she is asking for help protecting her family. put that in quotes on purpose because what the fuck are you even talking about? I'll be honest, this is hurting my brain here. And let me preface this with the fact that this person has outraised even Carmelo Anthony. They have raised about $650,000 at the time of this recording. Could be higher by the time you hear this. We're at a disturbing time in America, and let me explain why I think that's the case. There is a lot of people who have garnered fame by being so-called grifters, by saying things that they know are provocative, but they know will get views and clicks on the internet, that they know will get likes. There's also a significant amount at this point of our influencers, as we would call them, that take advantage of the clickbait formulation on the internet, that take advantage of people's short-sightedness, that take advantage of misinformation. And not to say that, as a podcast host and someone who puts things on YouTube, of course I try to make, attention grabbing thumbnails, don't get me wrong. But in terms of what I'm trying to put out there, the message that I myself am trying to convey, that we are trying to convey, and Andrew and I think we've been pretty straightforward and pretty clear that we're trying to utilize the facts at hand to the best of our ability. Now, could we have sold ourselves out? Could we have lied? Could we have race baited? Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. But that's not really our goal. And it's unfortunate to see that so many people continue to get fame for what I think we can all agree is doing something that is immoral. Now, let's talk specifically, because this is the most recent case, let's talk specifically about this Shiloh Hendricks person. And I'm sorry if it seems that I'm a little peeved, a little upset about this. It's because I am. I was upset with the raising of capital for Carmelo Anthony. I was upset with the raising of capital for Luigi Mangione. I am upset, honestly, more so with the raising of capital for this woman who decided it was the right thing to whip out a slur in order to slander not only a child, but another person. That is not taking into account, nor do I feel like it's necessary to take into account the background of the person who was accosting her on video, because at the end of the day, how we are kind of all perceiving how to live our lives at this point is that there is a camera on you at all times. Yeah, I'm in a position now where I set the camera up and I'm videotaping myself. I know exactly what I want to say, or at least I have an idea. But when you live in regular everyday life, I think it's pretty safe to assume that there's a good chance you have a camera on you. Whether you're, someone like me who's working at other people's houses and you have a Ring camera, you have the Ring floodlight camera on the corner of the house, or whether you're out on the street, maybe say in a city like New York, and you know that there are cameras on almost every other stoplight or the street lights, or every single business has security cameras. How about we just take into account the fact that everyone has this little thing in their pocket now? They all got cameras on them. If they're not happy with what they're seeing going on, they're going to take a video. So I can't fathom that somebody would be so short-sighted. Maybe they weren't short-sighted. I'll get into that in a second. But be so short-sighted as to use a slur, especially while you're making it obvious that you have a young child, when you know that your young child is now going to be at risk to the mob online. That's not to say that the people online have a right to dox your information, to come after you and leak your social security number, which is allegedly what happened. That doesn't mean that people should be able to do that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that is a threat. That is a threat that can happen pretty easily, conceivably, I would say. And to live your life as if there's no consequence for your words. Now, we used to live in a society where your words, you better be able to back them up. And I'm not talking about the females here to be completely fair, but maybe I should be. There used to be a time where you had to back your words up with what would be your fists, or even if you go further back, with a pistol that's in your holster. I'm not trying to say that's where I want to go back to. However, what I am trying to say is that there are some instances where you should expect, if you are going to be laying disrespect out to the general public, to somebody else, you should expect, if you're going to be utilizing slurs, racial or otherwise, that you're going to have some consequences come your way. And I do think that we are a better society for having consequences coming back at you for abusing what we tout in this country as a right to free speech. because I am the advocate. I'm the biggest advocate of there being the best combatant for the use of free speech that may not be the speech you want to hear, correcting that with better speech, overruling that bad speech with better speech, with speaking the facts, with bringing the truth to light. I'm the biggest advocate for that. At least I think. Or in my life, I am the one who promotes that the most that I know of. Somebody abusing it like this, and I'm sorry, but there could conceivably be a world in which we have someone who is, I think, by definition, a grifter, someone who knows they're going to be plastered all over the internet saying a slur, saying a quote unquote bad word, and taking advantage of the situation for personal gain. And am I saying that's what happened in this case? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not saying definitively, but what I am saying is it's disgusting, the public reaction to seeing something that is very easily understood as a bad thing, as an immoral thing that just occurred. And instead of condemning, seeing that person as a part of your side, whether you're talking about Luigi Mangione and being against the system and the downfall of the system and wanting to cause destruction in the system, you agreeing with that message, even if that's not what he was intending to do, you agreeing with the message that we want to bring the system down and donating thousands of dollars, becoming a supporter of a murderer. Or if we're going to go and look back at the Carmelo Anthony case, which is a pretty clean cut murder case, as I said in the episodes prior, and you can go look at my whole description. I'm not getting into that right now. But the amount of money raised for someone who came out and admitted to killing another person who was unarmed, who was not provoking them, actually the other way around, provoked the person that they killed into starting a bigger fight instead of walking away like the bigger person we're all supposed to be and raising money, I would say in I'd be completely comfortable saying 95% of the people giving money to that are seeing someone of their race, of their creed, of their tribe, and they're happy that there was a death of the other race and being comfortable in giving money to that person because you support them because they took out someone you don't like because of race. Disgusting. Or let's even go to the more recent possible. And it's hard to conceive that someone would do this, but let's be honest, this is the way of the world now. Instead of working your whole life, working like honestly, I'll put it the rest of us, spending time working away, trying to be a good person and earn money in a valiant and a strong way, something that you could be proud of. Instead, people are willing to, in my opinion, sell their souls, and not to get all religious on you, because we'll talk about that in a minute, not to get all religious on you, but selling your soul in order to gain a step ahead of your peers, of your neighbors, by selling out and doing something that you know is going to catch attention and taking advantage of that in a completely selfish way, especially in a case like that just happened. I don't know the location of this Shiloh Hendricks, nor do I care. Taking advantage of a situation where, again, I think there's a very high chance that she knew. And I'm just guessing, but very high chance that she knew exactly what was going to happen when she said those words on camera and took advantage right away, took advantage immediately. Honestly, her promoting herself on this platform is getting more attention to the incident than it would have otherwise. And it is infuriating to me to see so many people that I know working their asses off day in and day out. It gives the same type of feeling when I watched lots of people that I knew decide not to work an hour for months on end during the COVID epidemic because they knew that the government was going to give them more money than they could ever earn if they went and had a job at that time. And it makes me think, all right? That instance made me think that the government had a plan. This instance makes me think that maybe not the government, but that the companies that we are giving our money to, the people that we're giving our money to, that we as Americans and we as people in general don't really care about morality. And that hurts me inside because as someone who, don't get me wrong, have made plenty of mistakes in my life, I'm a very flawed individual. Like I think everybody in this world is a flawed individual. That being said, I am comfortable in stating the fact that I think that I've lived my life especially since I have gained the consciousness and adulthood. I've lived my life in as moral of a way as I could possibly try to. I have lived my life in a way that I would be proud telling how I have lived my life to future generations. It doesn't get you anywhere, unfortunately. It's a very rare circumstance where being a moralistic person, someone who holds your morals tight to your chest and you want to espouse those views to those who you know, or you want to create friend groups that are both well put together and kind of lift each other up with good morals, good ways of living. And it seems like almost every day we have a new person taking advantage of this clickbait, immoral society that we live in order to make a quick buck. And not just a quick buck, getting far richer than most people will ever see that type of money in their lifetimes. It hurts. It hurts inside knowing that we have the opportunity every day to make good people richer, to help people out that we are directly connected to. And instead, we sell that out. We give out, an example would be instead of going down to the corner store that is mom and pop owned and they're selling exactly what you need, but you're going to be spending 50% more. So you'd rather just buy the piece of shit off of Amazon. And it's the same thing of selling that little tiny bit every day out to people who are really unaffected by you and see you only as a number. And we wonder as people why we don't have a more cohesive society that lifts each other up in times of need. There are tons, there are thousands even. I would venture to say tens of thousands of campaigns on places like GoFundMe, GiveSendGo that are all great causes. People struggling with medical bills, people that are struggling in life, like really struggling, getting over addiction, getting put into a place where maybe they're kicked out of their childhood home and they need to find somewhere to live. And these campaigns, in most cases, barely reach half of what they're looking. Sometimes they wouldn't even get to 10% of what they're hoping to raise. And yet we give hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to these ridiculous causes that are ripping us apart from each other, especially along the lines of racism. And it is infuriating to me because one of the reasons, and if you haven't been exposed to our Substack now, I would love for you to go read my initial post on there. There's only two posts. So read my initial post on there and get an idea for who we are as we the Patriots and what we're doing here. Because one of the biggest reasons that Andrew and I, started doing this podcast and this whole thing in general was we have a massive distrust for mainstream media. And where does that come from? Well, it comes from being lied to for years and years on end, whether that's along racial dividing lines, whether that's along class lines, whether we're talking about Republican and Democrat as if we're not both a part of the same country. It honestly doesn't feel like it anymore. This is why we hate mainstream media and what the current day environment is online is now turning into the same exact environment that mainstream media was. The whole point, at least the way that I understood it, the whole point of getting off of that line of thinking, getting off of the mainstream media and consuming that media was because people online, generally speaking, before I would say the past 5 or 6 years, people online had more to lose by being online. And so they would be more truthful. They would be less divisive because their fan base would suffer from it. But now, at the time that we're living now, we are living in a point where divisiveness, cruelty, racial slurs, divisions amongst classes are all so perpetuated by both sides, whether it is a rich person who is shitting on poor people, whether it is a white person shitting on a black person, vice versa, a black person shitting on a white person, whether we're talking about children who hate their elders, whether we're talking about Republicans who cannot stand Democrats or vice versa, Democrats who cannot stand Republicans. The money seems to be going to the people who are the most divisive, the most extreme on both sides of any issue. Nothing to do with truth, nothing to do with morality, nothing to do with wanting to create a better environment. And if that's what keeps this show from growing, I'd be happy to keep doing this show forever. Because I could not be a more heavy believer in pushing for a better future, a better America, a better time for all of us to live. I'd be happy to do that with 100, 200 subscribers than to sell myself out as a grifter, as a race grifter, as a class grifter, as someone who can't stand the Republicans or Democrats as if, again, we're not all Americans. I pray. I really do. I pray for this often that we as Americans and people of the world, honestly, that we can come together and really look for a brighter future rather than saying it when we have to, when we know we're on camera. I mean, really doing the things that we need to do to be better people, to make better people, and to help one another to achieve what we need to achieve, whether that's something as simple as helping the older lady that fell down at church today as I went. Friend John and I went to church, and one of the first things before Mass that happened was an elder lady fell down. Now, was it a silly decision to wear heels at 70 years old? Probably. Was it the right thing to do to help her as she fell? 100%. Do I wish I could have gotten there sooner and been the one to lift her up? Absolutely. But were we all there praying for her that she was all right? You're damn right. And is it better for you to, again, support the mom and pop shop instead of spending 50 to 75 to 100% less money on Amazon? I would say so. I think it would be better to support people that you know that are in your community that you have a connection with or could possibly make a connection with instead of living your life inside in a bubble where you do not interact with anybody. And I think that this way of thinking can affect lots of different pieces of your life if you let it. On the flip side, if you allow yourself, like I said earlier, to sell that little piece of your soul, I'll call it, every day, whether that's eating poorly, treating people poorly, allowing yourself, your family to be divided among class lines between the two parties of political thought. If you allow that little bit of division to keep sowing itself every single day in your life, and you look back in 10 years and wonder why your life is not as fulfilling, it's not as purpose driven as it once was, you do need to take a look in the mirror. And I have been in that mirror before, understanding why certain mistakes that I've made have led me to where I am today, or in years past, why certain mistakes I may have made led me down a path that I wasn't so happy with. I think that's something that we need to be a little bit more comfortable doing here. Again, not just as Americans, but as people of this earth. Now, we have some other unfortunate events that I'm not going to cover in today's show, but I do just want to make you aware. Allegedly, we have a very sad event that seems to have happened between India and Pakistan. A terrorist attack, a start of war, launching of missiles. And I just want to say prayers out to there that it does not divulge into another global conflict, because at this point, I do not think that there are many other strings that can be plucked from the balance of the world without falling into chaos completely. Now, are we in chaos right now? You're damn right. Especially with the recent Trump administration stirring things up across the world, and whether we like to admit it or not, either as Americans or people around the world, the actions of not just the president, but the United States as a whole affect the whole rest of the world massively. And I think that if we're not coming to some sort of realization that we're being divided both by companies, by our government, by different political parties, by the class division. If we can't take a second to realize, like I was mentioning earlier, that our environment online, social media in particular, places like X that really don't censor anything. And not to say that that's a bad thing. It's great, again, to allow for freedom of speech, and especially if you're going to count that as the new town center. Okay. But one of the things that's missing when something goes viral that is really based in hatred is that the mob mentality that is ganged up upon the people who originally support the dividing message. When someone comes across and tries to put facts that go against the grain of what was posted, whether those people that could make those arguments are even given the opportunity. There are some times where tweets are purposely deleted. There are times where, again, the mob comes in and just pummels them. We'll call it a ratio, where someone has more comments on their stuff because you can't dislike anything anymore, remember? more comments than they do likes. We're now creating massive echo chambers. And echo chambers is something that we've talked about not only on this show, but I think across the internet space for quite some time now. With that being said, if you're not recognizing that an echo chamber is being created, maybe not in your life, but in the lives of people around you, and if you can't recognize that it's affecting the way people are living their lives, I ask you to try to see if it might be you that's stuck in an echo chamber. There are so many times where I catch the fact that my feed, especially on Twitter, because I like to get a lot of my news from there, and I catch that my feed is tending much further in one direction or another. And you might think, as a longtime listener of this show, that it would tend a lot conservative, but in a lot of cases, my feed will actually tend very left. And it's because I either liked or I gave a lot of attention to things of a leftward nature. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there in communist slop. I'm sitting there reading stuff that I could not more vehemently disagree with. And the reason being is it's catching my attention and recognizing that I've gotten myself into this algorithm because I'm giving it my attention. I'm not allowing myself to just pass over certain things as really not affecting me and letting them affecting me. I hope that you, and I don't want to tail off on this too much longer, but I hope that you out there, if you're listening to this and you pay any sort of heed to what I'm saying, or you actually care about my opinions, which I appreciate you. There are over 100 of you now subscribing to the YouTube channel. I can only imagine that a decent amount of you like what I have to say for a certain amount. If you do put any sort of weight on what I have to say, all I can tell you is do not let what's online affect the way you live your life. If anything, pay it no attention. Use it as a news source like I try to do. Not saying I'm any better than anybody else out there because, again, I get sucked into these rabbit holes just as much, I think, as anybody else. But make better connections in real life. Help out those who are in need, who are around you. You do not need to give your money to someone you've never heard of that may or may not be using the opportunity of divisiveness in order to make themselves a quick buck. And instead of giving money to that cause that you know is divisive deep down, give money to someone that you see that's struggling. Give money to get a product that you really, really know you could save money on by going to a big box store like Amazon, Walmart, Target, and give the money to the mom and pop shop down the street. Get to make connections. Become somebody of importance in your community because I'll tell you right now, may you spend a little bit more money, a little bit more time investing into these things? Absolutely. Could it pay dividends both in your own ability to create a purpose in life, or not only that, giving purpose to someone else, or creating the fabric and the ability for you to have connection down the road? Absolutely. I'd like to give a personal anecdote before I get out of this show because I think it's somewhat relevant. I was someone who was outside of the church for quite some time. Believe we get confirmed somewhere around the age of 14, 15 years old. After I got confirmed, I don't think I went to church for 5 years. And somewhere right around the year before COVID for sure. So this would be 2019. So I'd be about 19 years old. And sometime around that time, I had with my current partner at the time, my current girlfriend at the time, had a little bit of an epiphany as talking to her father where I realized that I really should visit the church again. Then it wasn't because of anything that he was saying in particular, but because of a realization that I had that I really do think that I'm more connected to the church than I've been giving myself the opportunity to do. Now, this is not me trying to tell any of you that you need to be Christian, Catholic, or anything of the sort, but me saying that building a community, especially one that is a built-in community, may be good for you. Now, let me continue. As I started to get back into the church, I very quickly became friends with the priest at my local church. Now, I had to move away from my hometown church for many reasons I won't make too public on this podcast, but in me making this new community and trusting others around me that this might be a church that makes sense for me, I went in with an open mind and an open heart, and to this day, that priest, Father David, who's been on the show before, and I believe I may have said some of the story, one of my best friends. As I started to make this community and make these friendships, make these connections throughout COVID and throughout the years of COVID, and making more friends like John, who's also a friend through the church. And becoming aware of the different moving parts and other pieces of the church that come together, realized that a lot of people in that community were connected to not only other churches, but other parts of life that I've known for years. And I just wasn't able to connect with because I was not really giving myself into being a part of my local church. And in doing so, making these further connections, I had an opportunity this year where someone approached me and asking about my work life, which I think many of you are well aware that I am a big part of a family owned landscaping and construction company, and asked if I could, this person asked if I could possibly take a look at another church locally and if we could possibly take care of their work there. So I took a look, and it turns out we could. Gave them I guess, an offer that they were very comfortable with. And at this point, in making that connection, in being able to not only make friends, but be able to talk, be able to find out what other people are needing and really what other communities might need in terms of getting themselves to a better position. I was able to give this church and give this person who approached me an opportunity to take me up on the services that I provide in everyday life and not just me going and doing readings at church. And in doing so, made my company a decent sized sale, and that's all well and good. But on the other hand, be able to provide a better service that these people who go to this community were unaware was available because they've had the same level of service for years. And being able to make these connections, being able to make more friends, being able to create a larger net in terms of a community is all of those little pieces that come together to giving someone like me a lot of purpose in life. And so I extend that out to you. I ask that, again, if you give any sort of attention to what I have to say, maybe it's a good idea that you go try to start. And again, I'm not trying to say it needs to be religious, whether you are Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, Catholic to be specific, whether you're none of those. I'm not necessarily saying that even you need to commit to something like that, because there are so many people in this world who have terrible experiences with many different religions, and I am not trying to force anybody into that. If you think that that is something you might be interested in, by all means, go for it. But maybe it's something as simple as creating a group with your friends or people who you would like to be friends with again. Or maybe it's going out there online and trying to create a group of people who maybe aren't necessarily 100% like minded, but maybe you're interested in something. How many great communities do we see that are revolving around something like Star Wars, as May the 4th, as I am recording this, Star Wars communities, or something like a video game centered around something like, I'll just bring up one of the more common ones, like a Fortnite or a Roblox. And I'm not trying to make any suggestions here. I'm just pulling things out of a hat. If there's something that you love or something that brings you meaning, why not share that with the world or share that with people who may have that common cause that may be able to forward you not only in terms of being able to enjoy life or find a meaning, but be able to build a community that may have effects that are so much more important than you can even imagine the first day that you take that step out. In building this community, even, and I'll finish on this. In starting this was one of the most fruitful experiences of my life, whether we make money or not. Being able to grow in my ability of thinking, being able to confront the reality that I was very pigeonholed in my way of looking at the world, looking at politics, and understanding that there is a lot more to this life than just thinking that someone of the ilk of something like President Trump and that he is the end all be all savior. Not to say that I was at that point, but I was very damn near it back in the day, and especially when I was underage and unable to vote for him the first time around. And being able to come to the realizations, being able to do the research, being able to come to grips with the fact that I may have been short sighted in a lot of different ways of thinking. And at this point, I feel a lot more comfortable with the fact that I can be wrong on almost everything I'm saying. One thing I'm pretty confident in telling all of you out there is that you will find a lot more purpose doing the right thing and not being a grifter, not being a sellout, not selling your soul, and not being one of those people like a Luigi Mangione or a Shiloh Hendricks who gets money in some of the most egregious and immoral ways possible. That's all I got for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed my riff. Not that it was super positive, but I'm not going to lie, I think it was kind of necessary. I think it's necessary to point out the evils of the world, the way that we're going wrong as a society, as a people, and come to grips with the fact that we may not be the most morally clean people. That is okay, but what would be better is if we come out and try to work towards a solution instead of hating on each other all the time. Again, I'm your host, Sal Sante. This has been the We the Patriots podcast, and I will catch you all
I wish
next
I
week.
were the fucking state. I wanna be something, not nothing. Trapped inside my dream and I'm running away from these demons. But the feeling's so good, I'ma keep dreaming.